Welcome, listeners. This is Sebastian Nothwell interviewing S.O. Callahan. Hello.
Hello.
So excited to have you on board. What book are you most excited to talk about today?
I think I would love to talk about Breeze Spells because that one is so fresh and still super exciting, so I am all excited for it.
I am also excited about Breeze Spells because that was such a delight to read.
Oh, thank you so much.
What about it do you find particularly rewarding?
As far as the writing side of it or having it out in the world side of it?
Whichever side of it brings you the most joy.
Well, both. But certainly writing it was super exciting. It was a surprise project that I absolutely did not see coming, but I could not have asked for anything better at the time that it showed up in my life. So I will forever be grateful for this project, and now to have it out in the world for everyone to read is the best thing ever.
So this is your queer cozy Regency fantasy with Faye that you co-wrote with Sarah Wallace. How did that process get started? Because like you said, it seems to have kind of just appeared in your life.
It did. So, going all the way back, I had been a fan of Sarah's books for a while, and I had been following them on Instagram, and we were kind of not close, just how you are friends with people on Instagram. You like each other's stuff and follow along, but we didn't really, talk that much other than just being supportive of each other as indie authors. And then randomly, Sarah shared this tweet in their stories with the caption, "Oh my god, this would be so fun." And the tweet says, "I want a historical romance where two rivals send fake, damning gossip about each other to their local society pages to wreck one another's reputation. So the writer gets back at them by publicly announcing their engagement and making it impossible for them to back out." And I read that and I was like, you know what? It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I think on a Friday. And I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna message Sarah and I'm gonna be like, that sounds like so much fun. So I did. I messaged her and was like, should we write this book together? And Sarah was like, yeah. And so basically that was the beginning of a wild, wild adventure. That same weekend, we kind of planned out what we thought the book would be like. And ultimately, from that day until the end of drafting that book was about 6 weeks.
Which is insane. Like, that is just an absolute buck wild race to the finish.
It is. And looking back, we both agree that it was like the craziest thing we possibly could have done and really not smart because at the time I was working at a school and I was, waking up at like 5:30, 6 in the morning every day to get there. And then I'd come home and I would be writing until like 11 o'clock at night because basically it would be, during the day, Sarah would write their chapters and then I would come home and have read it already. And so I had my response ready. And so I would come home after work, make dinner, do all those things. And then basically from like 7 to 11, I'd be writing my responding chapter and then going to bed and waking up and doing it all over again the next day. So it was a wild fever dream of an experience, but I would not change it for anything. So
it is so cool that you were able to just kind of jump so quickly into such kind of like a fluid workflow with another author who, again, maybe this is the socially anxious part of me, but like that feels like such a big leap to be like, hello, we've never met. Do you want to write a book together?
it was, and we talk about that too, how it just, so the reason that I did is, because obviously it's just like, what could have possibly made me think that this was a good idea, right? So I loved Sarah's books. I still love Sarah's books, but we have similar writing interests. We have similar writing styles. From what little I knew of them, I thought that we would be friends. And so I just kind of, took that leap of faith and I just hoped for the best. And, looking back, I think that is a big part of why we wrote the book as quickly as we did as well, is I think we were just so worried because we didn't know each other and we we had never worked together or written a book that way with anyone else, that we were worried that it was going to kind of, crash and burn before we finished, because that's how projects go sometimes. You get started with the best of intentions and then they just kind of fall apart. So I think we were both kind of hoping that that didn't happen, so we kept the momentum going and it's just continued to keep going. So
It has. Because there are how many books drafted already?
yes, there are 4 in that series. 1 is out and 3 more to come.
Oh man. I mean, that was a hell of a leap of faith, but it seems like it really paid off for the both of you.
It did. We got so lucky. And I feel lucky every day that we're writing together, just because I hoped for the best, obviously, or else I wouldn't have reached out, but it's turned out better than I even possibly could have imagined.
And all the better for your readers as well.
Yes, that has been so fun, kind of combining our readerships into one fantastic fan base.
What would you say drives your storytelling and motivates you to write?
Motivates me to write is probably twofold. What motivated me to become a writer in the first place is just I have always loved not only telling stories, but hearing stories. And, I just think it's fascinating that one idea can spark an entire book, and so getting to be a part of that just for my own self to have those moments where an idea comes and, I actually can write a whole story about this. And so I have, and it still blows me away every day that I, have managed to do that. Not once, not twice, but several times now, and hopefully many more times to come. So I think that's part of it, is just showing myself that I can take these little, nuggets of joyous thoughts and turning them into something incredible. And then also the other side of the motivation is just honestly Sarah and our co-authorship. We talk every day about the stories that we have written, are currently writing, want to write in the future. And so when you have someone who is equally as excited for the same projects, that just makes it so much easier and so much more exciting than I ever experienced writing by myself.
It does seem kind of magical to be able to both hold each other accountable while at the same time cheering each other on and getting to kind of more immediately share in your successes than you would in any other writing format.
Yes, it's, every day, every project has been different, but, for the most part, it'll be one of us will write a chapter and then we immediately get to read that chapter and make comments on it and kind of just live the story as it's happening, even though we're not the only ones who are writing it. And that is it's the coolest thing ever.
Do you have a favorite character that you've created?
I love so many of my characters, but I think in Breeze Spells, I have to say Win is my favorite. There are so many parts of me in him, which I think a lot of authors would agree that it's hard not to put pieces of yourself into your characters in different ways, but I think the way that his whole story came together obviously is not entirely similar to myself, but there are so many pieces of it that I can relate to that I just really enjoyed putting into a story, and kind of he's definitely a character with a lot of growth. I loved being able to show that, and just enjoying who he became is really probably the biggest part for me.
He is very dynamic in that way, and it's also a delightful combination of prickly and charming with him.
Yes, and I feel that way about myself sometimes. After a decade in education working with children, I think most people see my bubbly side and they get all of that. But sometimes too, probably similar to many people, but just like my own perception of myself. Yes, I am presenting myself in a way that I enjoy, but also sometimes when that's the expectation, because that's what people know about you, and they don't really know so many things about you as a person, but you're also kind of not necessarily not wanting to show that part of you, but it's just not who you are, out in the world. And so I think getting to show that a little bit through him of just, he is who he is, but there is a different side of him that only comes out with people that he trusts and feels comfortable with, and I can relate to that.
I think a lot of us can, honestly.
Yeah.
What stories inspire you?
Stories that inspire me. I love a good happily ever after. That is always going to be my go-to. And I think cozy fantasy is a very broad term, but I think one of my favorite things about cozy fantasy is that it can be a struggle, that there can be challenges and there can be hardships, because that's what makes a story interesting. But it's also real life. You know, real life is hard sometimes. But then the fact that the story can wrap up with a pretty bow on it, and there can be a happily ever after even when things are hard. I really find that inspiring.
What is the number one thing you want readers to take away from your books?
Probably as time has gone on, I've realized that I want my readers to be able to see themselves in my stories. I mean, I love it when I hear from, readers who will reach out to me and say that they felt so seen by a certain character or, something that they read in the story. I just think that's so cool to be able to not necessarily directly connect with other people that way because it's not, me talking to them straight about it, but, the fact that I wrote this story and then they read it and they felt seen by something that I wrote and they felt it enough to reach out to me and let me know that they were affected by that and that they felt that connection to a character that I created is just, I don't even have the words for that. It's good every time. And I hope it keeps happening for a very long time because that's a big part of why I like to write these stories is so that people can connect to them and, be reading about a character and just have that moment of like, oh my gosh, that's me, maybe not entirely, but little parts of them. And we all want to feel seen. We all want to feel like we can connect to somebody. So the fact that I can do that for other people is really amazing.
Yeah. That human connection is honestly one of the most powerful parts of storytelling.
It is.
And like you said, extremely rewarding. What are some themes that you love to explore and or revisit in your writing?
The first one that I always go to is nature. All of my books up to this point have been either very inspired by nature or at least a little bit inspired by nature. Breeze Spells is inspired by nature within the magic that Wynne and the other Fae characters present in the story. But I always go back to nature first because that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from. Basically, anytime I get to spend a little bit of time outdoors, I love to be in the mountains, I love to be at the beach, or just getting to be around some flowers and some sunshine. I mean, really, it doesn't take much, but I often find that those moments are when I am, story ideas will just hit me or inspirations for a next chapter will hit me. Even when I'm not trying to, come up with something, but I've noticed the patterns so many times now that I'm just like, all right, here I am sitting outside in the fresh air. Here come the ideas. I can feel them tingling. So
It's become a cliche, but it is something truly powerful in touching grass.
there really is. There really is. I joke about, when I first got the ideas to write my first books, I was hiking. And then when Sarah and I had finished Breeze Spells, because it was such a whirlwind, we both agreed at the end that we would take a short break, because we had more ideas and we knew at that point that I think we wanted it to be a series and not just a standalone book. So we were kind of in this, I don't know, holding place where we knew that there was more to come, but we just weren't sure what yet. And so I think it had been about probably less than 2 weeks at that point since we had finished our draft of Breeze Spells. And we went to this big garden here, and my husband and I were walking around, and as we were leaving, I had the biggest inspiration moment for for the second book in the series, and I texted Sarah and was like, Sarah, I know what this book is going to be about. And I sent this massive paragraphs long kind of like idea that I had for what the second book could be about. And that was literally because I'd just been walking around outside. Like it just came to me. And I think like within the next couple of days, we had that kind of, set up to get started writing on it. So
I can't help thinking of just like the 19th century capital R romantics in general, and more specifically that one bit of Pride and Prejudice where Lizzie is like, what are men compared to rocks and mountains? And like, yeah,
love it.
it is difficult to not feel romantic in nature.
It is so true. And I am living proof that it is certainly the place for inspiration for sweet, cozy, romantic stories.
What advice do you have for aspiring authors?
The biggest one that I can think of, I mean, there are so many, pieces of advice you can give, you can take, but the biggest one for me that still is what I always keep in mind when I'm writing, is write for yourself first. I've got 3 books out now, more coming in the next couple of years, but every single time I sit down to write just one chapter, I'm like, I'm writing this for me. It's easy to get caught up in the feedback and the popular things that are going on with books and trends and reviews and all sorts of things. And I think what's most important is to always just write for yourself first, because that's what's going to keep you having fun with it. That's what's going to end up with a story that people can connect to. It's just going to make all of the times when you just are not feeling inspired, which will happen. You're going to have those days where you're like, I want to write so bad, but my brain is not braining and I can't. But, just remember to keep writing for yourself. That will make all those difficult moments not so bad, because you know that you're not forcing yourself to write this chapter, this next paragraph, because so-and-so said you had to, or you're not, bending to anybody else's wants for what you're writing. It's just for you. That's what keeps me going.
Co-signed 110%. And also, like, given how long it takes to write a book and how quickly the market fluctuates, if you're constantly chasing what's trendy, by the time you finish writing what's trendy, it's gonna be untrendy again.
Exactly. It all happens so fast that if you're trying to do that, you're gonna not only burn yourself out completely, but it's not gonna be fun, because then you're gonna have written this whole story trying to, follow what someone else wants, or what the masses are hoping for. And like you said, by the time you've got it all worked out, it's going to be over. So if you're writing for yourself and you're writing the type of story that you want to read, no matter when it comes out or how long it's, been out or anything like that, that's always going to feel good in your heart, because you knew that it was what you wanted to be doing.
Absolutely. So if folks want to follow you or read your stories, where can they find you on the internet?
Yes, I am probably the worst social media person of all the indie authors I know. I basically, the only social media I really use is Instagram. So you can find me there, SO Callahan. That's where I post all of, what's happening. My links are there to find my books. But yeah, I try to keep it simple, because I similar to Win, I do not enjoy being caught up in crowds of any kind, be it in real life or online. So I tend to focus on one area that I can handle and do well at, and Instagram has been that for me.
Win is so relatable. Truly, he is so relatable.
In so many ways, but that one in particular for me as well is just, I feel it so hard that that I just want to keep it simple and preferably away from crowds. So
what I love about the forest is that I'm one of maybe 5 people there.
Exactly. I can be getting my inspiration, but also it's quiet, and I I don't feel the pressure to be interacting and constantly giving my feedback on things to be a part of the crowd. I can just be quiet, and that's okay, because the trees and the flowers and the animals don't mind.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm so excited to have you join us for more roundtable discussion soon.
Yes, I'm so excited too. I can't wait to see where this podcast takes us all.
It's gonna be somewhere. We'll see.
We'll see. Somewhere for sure. Who knows where it'll end up, but it's exciting to get started. So that's all we can hope for now.